Hey gamers, Shah here, and today we are exploring the streets of Tazavesh and investigating the mayhem that is happening in the mailroom. This boss seems to be a pretty high damage and healing check, so let's break down the mechanics, positioning, provide some tips, and the best way to kill this boss with ease. Quick disclaimer, the strategy discussed in this video is subject to change based on your group's composition or key level. As the season goes on, there's always the possibility for strats to change, but with that out of the way, let's get into the breakdown. The Postmaster is a one-phase fight with a simple list of rotating mechanics. Those include Money Order, which is a large group soak, which evenly splits physical damage across everyone who is in the soak. Fan Mail will periodically happen, often overlapping with other mechanics, which is a physical group ticking damage, so healers just beware of this. Hazardous Liquid is a soak mechanic or a void zone spawn mechanic, and how you handle this totally depends on at what point you are in the fight. So in a few minutes I'll be going over a breakdown explaining when to soak and when not to soak these different materials. A good general rule is if you are going to soak, make sure you're the only player in that soak, and if you're going to soak more than one, make sure you're using an immunity or a defensive cooldown. The last mechanic is Unstable Goods. These are ticking time bombs that you need to dispose of through the open mail chutes within 30 seconds of them spawning. So with those out of the way, let's jump into a breakdown of the fight, step by step, what your group should do, and hopefully provide some helpful tips. So let's jump in. So before we jump into the breakdown, one thing I want to point out is that there are these overloaded mail elementals in this boss room, and when they expire, when they die, they actually provide a haste barrier that you can use for some initial good burst on the boss. So some classes that really like haste, on top of also having lust or hero, will love killing these as you pull boss. So that's what you're going to see here in a couple seconds. So right as this mail elemental dies, there is this barrier here, and we are pulling the boss in and making sure that we're focusing the Relic. The Relic will allow us to have some healing cooldowns back up quicker, some DPS cooldowns back up quicker, as well as provide general healing for one of the first fan mails or to top us up after the Money Order. So the first thing that'll happen in this boss fight is about 5 seconds in, you're going to get your first spawn of Hazardous Liquids. The general rule of thumb that my group has decided on is that this shape here is pretty much the area that you want to soak in, because if you keep this area clear, this is typically where the Unstable Goods will spawn, and from this inside of this area here, you are able to throw the goods into the chutes. So if you keep this area of the room nice and clean, it's very easy to make it inside. So if there's any pools that will spawn towards the outside or right next to a chute, there's no reason to soak it because you don't need to get that close. I'll point that out in a second though. So comes out, we want to make sure that we taunt it as a tank player. So this pool here doesn't necessarily need to be soaked. This pool here does not need to be soaked. You don't have to worry about it. So what I'm doing as a tank is I am moving away to try to soak some of these further ones so my ranged DPS can still stay inside of this barrier. Also, the way that these pools spawn, it is the exact same duration from when they spawn to when they need to be soaked. So if this one spawns that I just soaked a few seconds or right away, I can then sidestep right next to it to soak the other one to make sure that this room is staying nice and clean. So as you can see here, we have 2 pools that spawn right next to each other. This isn't too big of a deal because we can still access this chute if needed. The back of the room is clean, and so is the left-hand side. Right after this, Hazardous Liquid, you're going to get some fan mail, and then following this, you're going to get Money Order. So at this point, you would like to be dead to make sure it can top up the group. So we have our buff rolling, and then we're group soaking this. It's physical damage. So what I always recommend is full group soaking and using a DR here. If you have an immune class, we have Netherwalk on our DH, and we have Ice Block on our Mage. If it's on either of those later in the fight, what they're going to do is they're going to immune the mechanic. So I'm putting down a marker here, and the boss is, once he hits 100 energy, he spawns Unstable Goods. When an Unstable Good spawns, you have 30 seconds to remove it from play, or it will blow up and kill your entire group. And then the other thing that I want to note is the mail chutes. You can tell which one is going to activate based on these lights on the wall. So because these are going to be yellow or orange, this chute is going to open up in a few seconds. If you look towards the other end of the room, you'll actually see that there are red lights that means those chutes are not active yet. And then once a chute is actually active, the lights will glow blue. So right after these unstable goods spawn, the boss will go into fan mail. The healer wants to make sure that they are not carrying a bomb. They need to focus on healing up the group during this fan mail because it does warrant a lot of group damage. So we're running over here and throwing them inside that chute. Once fan mail ends, we're making sure that we're trying to stack back up so we can get some grouped healing. And then this is another trick you can do, is if you're a player who doesn't have as much mobility as a guardian druid, we have our warlock over here who is in position. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to throw him this package. So as long as a player is inside of this like red circle, they can actually catch the bomb and then continue to throw it. So now our warlock is going to throw it into the chute. You want to make sure you're finishing off all of these unstable goods before the next hazardous liquid comes out. Because once this happens, your group needs to focus on soaking. Now, again, general rule of thumb. This area now is what we want to keep clean that I'm outlining. Or if there is a pool spawning inside of an old pool, you don't need to worry about it. So we have one spawn right underneath boss. Typically tanks want to soak this. We want to make sure that we're soaking this pool so our shaman is inside of it. This pool doesn't need to be soaked. This pool way over here definitely doesn't need to be soaked. And this one, you can argue to soak it or not, but I don't think we end up soaking it. Another pool spawns here. This does not need to be soaked either because it's right next to an old pool. And now this is what our room looks like. So one thing you want to keep in mind is it's very difficult to see in this video, or how small it is, but the tank has 2 stacks and each of our DPS only took 1 stack. Now, what's really important that the healer needs to keep in mind here is you want to make sure you dispel either a player who has high stacks, unless it's your tank, who can typically heal themselves, or heal a DPS who doesn't have a cooldown available. And then following that hazardous liquid, we're jumping right back into another fan mail, which again is group AoE damage. We see that some cooldowns get popped here. This is an ability you really have to respect. The fan mail into a money order. You can see that our group gets really, really low here. Ascendance was popped. And our shaman actually ended up going down here. Because he had a debuff, he should have decursed himself, dispelled himself to make sure he wasn't taking that extra damage, and he also had Spirit Gel available. So just a couple things to keep in mind, that fan mail, especially if you're soaking, is very, very dangerous. Now, when should you not soak hazardous? So of course, like I've already mentioned, you don't want to soak when the pools are on the outside towards the edge of the room. So, you know, if it's out here or over here or back towards the very back of the room, or if they're in old pools. But another time you don't want to soak is if you can commit to a tunnel. So if you know that you can do, in this case here, we have 1 million damage left on the boss. If we know that we can tunnel before the next unstable goods finishes, we're looking real good. So unstable good is at 3 seconds. Let's see what we do here. Do we call for a tunnel? So with 800k left on the boss, we decide to tunnel. So this is the very first package that spawns. So we need to kill the boss 30 seconds when this one comes out. So pretty much from this point, we need to be able to commit. But because we just had Tyrant come active, we are looking for a kill. Now, of course, this is done on a fortified 24. So the boss health isn't as high as you might see on a Tyrannical. Typically on a Tyrannical week, you have to handle the second set of bombs or unstable goods. But after that, you would tunnel. Because we were tunneling this set, that last hazardous liquid set, we technically didn't even have to soak. So you only need to soak if you're going to be doing the next unstable goods. You have to have a lot of respect for the fan mail money order overlap, and you should definitely try to immune if you can. So that was a very fast boss kill. That was actually done in 1 minute and 41 seconds. Of course, being on a fortified week with Lust and the Mail Elemental buff at the start, we had a huge DPS spike. You can see, if we back it up just a few seconds, you can see that at the end of the fight, our Demo Warlock was doing 26k. So just a few tricks for this fight. You can tell which chute is going to be opening based on the color of the lights that are on the wall. Red means it's closed. Yellow means it's going to be opening shortly. Blue means that it's currently active. Another thing is you can throw the unstable goods to another player, but I would recommend making sure that they are not going to move. So if you're not in voice, I don't recommend doing that. But in a hierarchy, it's definitely worth passing it to a different player to minimize movement and to utilize group stackability for healing. Immuning the money order is a huge plus, so if you can do that, I recommend doing it. So things like evasion, things like nether walk, ice block, all are extremely useful here. You can technically reincarnate as a shaman as well if needed. And then lastly, just don't soak hazardous liquid if it's in an old pool or if it's in a spot that's not going to affect how you're going to handle the next unstable goods. So I hope that guide helps. I hope that breakdowns helps. I get a lot of questions about this place, especially this boss. So I just wanted to make a quick video explaining exactly how my group does it, what to look out for, and what to respect. So I hope you guys learned something from this video. If you have any other suggestions or recommendations for this fight, please leave them in the comments below so other people can have access to that kind of knowledge. And let me know which boss you guys would like to see next. Hope you guys are all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Take care.